Hello and welcome back to Local Music Hype with BRIMBANK Live as a part of Live FM. Today we are interviewing the amazing Tamara Valmar, who is a local music artist in Melbourne. And say hello to Tamara.
Hey guys.
So how has isolation been affecting your creativity and well-being? It is a bit of an odd time in this pandemic.
Yeah, it's really strange. I can't imagine what it would be like, especially for touring musicians and musicians who have a little bit more of a presence with their live shows. Because I've sort of been like on a bit of a sabbatical from playing live and playing shows and, gigging, because it's just like, I started working full time and the whole mental health thing. So I've been really focusing on recording and like getting my sound sort of where I want it to be so that I can pivot to this different project, I guess. But, now that I'm, isolated and sort of having to stay inside all the time and not going out the same way that I used to be, and having those experiences and spending those time around the people that used to influence what I would write so much, there's a lot less of that, I guess, just like lived inspiration sort of coming in. And then when you're in ISO, like, you feel like you have all the time in the world and you feel like you should be productive and you feel like this is the time, like this is when I should be like getting these projects out. This is when I should be creating. And then it just puts more stress on yourself. So you're trying so hard to manage that level of self-care and level of, I guess like giving yourself permission to slack off a little bit. This isn't actually the best time to be productive right now. Like everyone's sort of dealing with the whole like trauma and sympathy fatigue of everything, and just constantly having it on the mind. It's really rough. So I've been trying as hard as I can to record and write and find those little pockets of time and find those little moments of creativity where I can get something done that I'm actually happy with. But I'm trying not to be too harsh on myself. That's the hard part, is like not judging yourself for not having anything at the end of the day, or not having what you expected to, I guess.
Yeah, that's so good. And this time it's definitely very important to be giving ourselves breaks and being like, hey, you are allowed to sleep in. We do have a lot of time.
I was going to ask, you said that your creativity has been a bit here and there. Is there anything that you do during like the writing process to get you amped up or to get your like creative juices flowing?
Yeah. I don't know. It's like it comes and goes. Like you said, it's in and out. And sometimes, when I was writing The Fifth back in like 2017, I had this weekend after a period of like months of not having any good ideas or not having any real like creative juices flowing, I guess. And then this weekend happened where I like smashed out 2 songs in like 2 days and it just kind of came out. So it feels like I try and wait for that to happen. But one of the things I do try and help, what helps is like, giving myself sort of a bit of a project, giving myself sort of like, this is what I'm going to try, at least. This is like an angle that I'm going to approach, or like in a particular artist I'm going to like sort of work off as inspiration. And then it sort of goes on its own path. Like I'll start writing and it'll just be taken in a certain direction. Like, I was recording with a drum machine that I have the other night, just because I was like, I haven't actually recorded anything with this yet. I've just been messing around. And then I wrote some lyrics and added some guitars to it. And it was just like, this sure has turned into a 21 Pilots song. But like, and I didn't expect that. I wasn't like thinking about that from the beginning. So it's like, if I start with something in mind, like I'm going to, try writing with like harp, or I'm going to try writing from like a more compositional perspective and do something a little bit more like movie score like, and then just see sort of where that grows into and how that then sort of adapts itself to my normal writing process, I guess.
Yeah, wow. So With being a solo musician and also doing your own production and writing all your own stuff, what's that process like? Where do you start? Do you start with the lyrics or the melody or the instruments?
It varies a lot of the time. I'll sit down to write and I'll sit down and be like, all right, I just want to mess around and do some music for a bit. And I'll start usually with like a sound, like I'll have an idea or a musical idea in my head that I can like play out on guitar or like record on piano and then add like drums behind. And then from there, I can sort of be like, all right, what does this sort of feel like? And then what's going on in my life at the moment, and sort of vomit out some words alongside it. Or, other times I'll have ideas for a song that I do want to write about. So the lyrics will come up first, but most of the time it's, I'll write a musical idea first and then see sort of what fits with it. I've had times in the past where I've written music to sing along to and then just sort of hit record and stood in front of a microphone and just sort of sang the first words that came to my head and been like, yeah, all right, that's fine.
Yeah, I think me and Lauri are both songwriters as well. So like we totally understand all that. Do you ever just like, you get that, you hear like a word or you hear a melody in your head and you just run with it for like the next few days? Yeah.
Yeah.
I love those moments.
And I have to like, productive. I have to pull out my phone and pull out voice memos and like sing it or hum it and make sure that it doesn't go away.
And then I forget to, when I do that with my voice memos, I always forget to name them. And so I just have thousands of recordings of recording number, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like,
oh yeah,
which one's that?
Just go through.
It's like home, October 2018. Cool. I know what that is.
Yeah.
So when you're writing, what do you sort of center around in terms of like themes? What would you say are like your biggest inspirations? What gets you writing? What gets you going?
Just like, I don't know, it's writing music is incredibly narcissistic, and it's like, it's really hard to dance around that fact. Like I spent so long writing lyrics that were sort of just words put in an order that felt pretty, and then realized that, oh, these songs are about nothing. Like I don't actually have sort of a narrative or a lyrical through line here. And from there, like I started writing a lot more about my life and a lot more about what I was dealing with, and like just experiences that I had, relationships that I was going through, and everything became a lot more autobiographical. Everything became a lot more like, writing journal entries, I guess. But there's just been so much just like stuff going on in life that, is just this immense pool of sort of stories to sort of pull from. And I guess when I try and write lyrics, especially, I just want to like, I don't want to make it too alienating. And that's what I worry about, is I worry about like, oh, these are very like personal experiences, like how are people sort of going to relate to them? And then, people tell me like, oh my God, I love this song of yours. It made me cry. And I'm like, why? That's not about you. Like you didn't go through that. But then I realized that, oh no, it's the way that you sort of put these experiences into a sort of tangible form that people can listen to. And it becomes this really validating experience for them, because it creates this source of relation that, they don't find otherwise. And that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. You mentioned mental health before. How does that affect not only like your process, but also your music as a whole? And do you have any like advice that you would give or that you wish someone had given you?
Just like, you need to be kind to yourself. You really, really like that aspect of self-nurture comes in so hard, especially if you're in a creative field and your art and your work it's like even more so as a solo musician, because you're doing everything yourself. It's so easy if you're battling, depression, anxiety, ADHD, like BPD, like you've got so much sort of going on in your head already that, you struggle to focus in day-to-day life, and trying to put that down into words and trying to kind of get that out is really difficult sometimes, even if you have a good idea. I find my hard drive, like, because I've kept everything I've recorded since like a billion years ago. And it's just full of all of these projects that I've started and then recorded like a couple of bars and been like, yeah, that's a cool idea. And then like had no idea where to take it, how to like grow the song, how to sort of like progress it. And that's so disheartening. And it's really hard not to give up and just, you know, you hit those walls. And if you've sat down and decided to write something or record something, and then, you know, you have a really good idea and then you lose that really quickly, you know, it's so important to sort of just say to yourself, like, no, it's okay. Like, you'll come back to it and you have it. And, you know, this isn't like you haven't failed just because you haven't been able to like smash out a 4-minute track in 20 minutes. Like, you know, I've had stems like that, like little tidbits, little riffs that I've recorded and then like had that moment of like, oh, this is crap, it's not going anywhere. And then come back to it like 2 years later and it becomes a song.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. It's a wonderful process. We're gonna probably through to your song now. So is there anything that you'd like to mention about what it was like writing Aspect? Any like, what did it mean to you to be able to write that and release it?
Oh, yeah, Aspect was, it was cool. It was the first thing that I was releasing under my new name and not like, well, my name. So Valmar's my middle name. So Tamara Valmar is the first time I'm recording and releasing under a project that's just named after myself and not behind a pseudonym. So it was kind of scary because he's this kind of really honest, like reboot of myself. And like the song it's about like a breakup and it's about sort of dealing with the aftermath of that and like what a really, really long relationship in like really formidable years of your life sort of like leaves you with when you're an adult and you're like, cool. Yeah, it's really personal. And I sort of was like, cool, my first single is really sad. But you know, there's a bit about it that's sort of about taking those experiences and sort of the mental health that goes along with it. And just sort of being like, oh, I'm like, you know, I'm still here and I'm still able to keep going. And that's, if you don't take anything else away from it, you know, that's what you have.
Thank you so much for that. So
yeah.
If you're just tuning in, this is Local Music Hype on BRIMBANK Live with Live FM. This is Lauri and
I'm Amy.
And we're listening to Tamara Valmar's song, Aspect.
And I can no longer see you. had to check in with it. I said it was fine, and that was all we said. And I can't quite speak. It's fine if it's only a drink. And I can no longer see yours and mine. And all it takes is this communication to know that I'm still here, spending nights cold standing in our bedroom mirror, saying I'm still alive. So how can I forget all of this? So how can I forget all of you?
That was Aspect by the wonderful Tamara Valmar. You were listening to Local Music Hype with BRIMBANK Live on Live FM. And with us today, we have Tamara Valmar.
Hi, Tamara Valmar. That song was amazing. Can I ask, because I'm into production myself, how do you get your ideas behind like the music behind it, the instrumentals, the beats? How do you put all that together?
Yeah, I mean, it happens during the writing process. So I record and write at the exact same time. I do everything into Logic, and sort of as I have my ideas, I'll track them down and record the guitar, record the drums, record the bass. So sort of like as I'm stepping through the song bit by bit, it's basically sounding like what it's going to be. I find it really difficult to sort of come up with an idea first on anything that isn't like inside the DAW, because that's where I'm most comfortable, is like using Logic as an instrument and using Logic as something that I can write with. So it's so much easier for me to be in that space, in the box, recording and writing at the same time, and making sure that those ideas are somewhere and sounding how I want them to. And it helps me because like if I can hear, like if I'm just using my guitar and playing and strumming along to chords, it's fine. I can get a good sort of idea of the harmony of the song and like the progression, but it's those sound design aspects. It's how like the drums come in. It's how the different layers appear that influence the direction that the song is going to go in my head next, I guess. So like I can hear it a little bit clearer. Because if I have an idea for a song in my head, it's not just, oh, it's these chords and these words. It's like, oh no, in my head, I can hear exactly what it's supposed to sound like what all the pieces should be when they come together. So trying to get as close to that as I'm putting it together at the moment, you know, before that sort of goes away, is sort of what I try and focus on. But I find that it's a double-edged sword, because it means that I spend a really long time on sound design and not actually writing.
Yeah.
And because like you're in Logic and you have all of these different presets and options available to you, it can be like super overwhelming. So sometimes you want to like step back and, you know, give yourself those limitations. Maybe like try recording with just like a melodica, or try recording with like, I don't know, just your iPhone, and like see what you can do with just that, because that's where the sort of the cooler ideas are going to come from, and then you can build it out. But also I should practice what I preach and actually do that, because I don't.
What's your favorite kind of instrument to work with? You mentioned before you've worked with a harp. That's really interesting.
Oh, I wish it was a real harp. I wish I could afford to like go down to VCA and like rent a real harp. No, like, I mean, it's, you know, with the future and computers and tech, you can just sort of like emulate any sort of instrument. I do really, like I mentioned melodica, and I really like the sort of distorted sort of reed, like accordion sound that it has. You can get a lot of nice sort of pad textures out of it. The melodica, if you guys don't know, is that trippy sort of keyboard instrument that you blow with a tube. Sounds really cool in like salon orchestras and like quirky indie music. It's in Gorillaz a lot, but
Yeah.
it's different, and it takes a lot of breath control to sort of like get those sounds. But I mostly write from guitar, and that was a thing I sort of forced myself to do a couple of years ago, in that I was recording guitar as I had to, like as I needed to. I was like, I have this song and it needs a guitar part, so I'll figure out how to play it and then record it. And then like 10 minutes later, I've forgotten how to play it because I'm not recording it anymore. But, I forced myself to sort of sit down, and I tried playing in different tunings, playing in open tunings, playing in like more of like a Midwest emo sort of indie rock style with like twinkly guitar lines and, punk tunings. And it put guitar into this whole other perspective where I'm like, oh, these chord shapes are really similar along. I can use a capo to sort of transpose it. This is really simple. And it's probably not the most it's not the best way to play guitar because it's kind of limiting in that sense, but it opened the door for me to be able to play it as the instrument itself rather than just sort of have it be another an element of the recording process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Can I ask you something about, you mentioned DAWs before. What's your opinion? I've found lots of people, when they hear that people make music through those DAWs, they think it makes it less of a song as opposed to using traditional instruments.
No.
What do you think about that whole discourse?
No, that's pretty garbage. Like, look at any song that has done super well over the past 30 years, and they've tracked it in Pro Tools, which is a DAW, and that's going to have lots of MIDI and instruments. And Metallica, lots of metal bands will literally they'll record drums live and then beat replace it, literally press a button on the computer that says, oh, every time there's a kick drum, make a marker, and every time that there is a kick drum, take out the live recording that we did and put in this fake kick drum that sounds better because we know exactly how it sounds. Songs are engineered, and there's obviously going to be a place for live acoustic sessions where you've got a beautiful nylon guitar and an upright bass and people on violins, and that's cool. That's awesome. That's not going away anytime soon. And you can get really good live recordings of people. But the way that DAWs, as I mentioned, they're an instrument in itself. The laptop is an instrument. The computer is an instrument. And it's the way that people use that in new and different, interesting ways that you can't really do with any sort of other instrument. And it still takes a lot of practice, and it takes a lot of work to sort of study and get to that point. Listen to Billie Eilish's new album. All of the production that Phineas did on that album was all done in Logic Pro, and it wouldn't have been the same way if we just put a bunch of live musicians into a studio and hit the record button.
I remember I saw in an interview that when they were in Australia, one of the sounds that they used in the song is when you press a little button and you're wanting to walk across the road in Australia, and the little man, the crossing man, does a little beep, 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 beep thing. Yeah. I don't know how to describe it, but I think that is one of the main bass lines that they used in Bad Guy, which I just think is the coolest thing. It's
so cool. And those sort of found sounds and sampling is one of the coolest ways I find to build percussion and build elements of the song. So I'd love to get into field recording and having sort of a recorder that I can take with me out into the world and just sort of be how can I repurpose this sound into something else?
I remember the other day, my refrigerator started acting up and started making this weird crunching noise. So I got out my mic and I started recording it, and that became the backdrop for this new punk song I'm writing.
Oh, that's so cool.
I think with DAWs, it's an instrument in itself. Once you learn to explore that, and you can make music out of anything in the world.
Sorry for anyone who's listening and has just heard Amy and I burst into giggles. We're currently having a Zoom interview due to the pandemic, and Tamara Valmar's cat has just walked across the screen, and we both love cats, so we're very excited by it.
This is Eve. Eve is a part of all of my Zoom meetings because she doesn't know boundaries.
I love her so much.
Oh, she wants to talk into the mic.
Yeah. Amy and I have a very personal debate, and we would like your opinion of it. How do you feel about synths?
Synths? Like in general?
In general, the instrument.
They're great. You can do so much with synths.
I'm not the biggest fan of synths. It's always turned me off certain music. Lauri does not like that.
That's fair. I mean, it's a particular sort of texture, but you know, the depths to which synthesis goes is just like you can do anything, you know, like you have additive synthesis and subtractive synthesis, which you hear on those massive dance pop pads, and it has that particular sort of sawtoothy sound. And then you have things like FM synthesis and granular synthesis, where you're breaking up samples or like manipulating frequencies in certain ways and making percussion sounds and like weird, super distorted. Like if you've ever listened to like Dylan Brady's production from 100 gecs or the stuff that he's done for Charlie XCX, like that really crunchy sort of like growly sort of sound that you can do with FM synth is like, you know, how else would you do that? So as anything,
adding to my point on why synths are wonderful and should be a part of all music.
To anyone who is just listening and can't see us, Lauri is just glaring at me every so often. But Tamara makes a good point.
We're coming up to the end of the interview now. So before we go, we've got a list of icebreaker questions here.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yes. We've got a list of icebreaker questions here. That we'll ask you, and then we're going to segue into your second song that we're going to play. So what would be your talent if you were a participant in a Miss Universe pageant?
Oh, man.
It's a tough one.
I don't know, maybe like I'm thinking of a lot of like circus sort of stuff because I always really loved like circus sports when we got to do them in school. So like either like Diablo or like fire spitting.
Ooh, that is a pretty good one.
Just because I could like potentially set the judges on fire.
That sounds fantastic. You just have to be careful of what kind of dress you wore.
Oh my God, that's true.
Wouldn't want to set that on fire.
Just head to toe rayon just completely goes up in flames.
If it's intentional flames, that just makes it even better.
I'm wearing a second outfit under the first outfit that explodes in flames.
Well, I think we've got your live concert planned now. We expect some fire breathing.
There you go. You guys are basically producing my next live show.
Exactly. Let's go.
So yeah, we'll go through to your next song now. We're playing Next Level Charlie. What was it like writing Next Level Charlie, and what does it mean to you?
It took a while for me to get around to Charlie's album, and when I listened to it and that opening track hit, I'm like, this is the best album opener ever come out in like the past 10 years. Like I don't know how to listen to this without just getting completely hyped up. And I swear when I was really into that album, I was listening to that particular track like at least like 3 times a day, like on my way to work, on my way home. And as I kept listening to it and sort of realizing the way that her vocals sat over the chords that were happening and sort of the potential for all of those different sort of harmonies that I could do with it, I was like, oh, I need to try this. And as I it started more as an experiment, like I just recorded myself sort of singing along to it and then adding and transposing harmonies on top and just constantly going off with the layers. And then it just sort of became a whole production. And I was like, yeah, this can go out.
I like the reluctance in that. Yeah, I guess this is good enough to share with the public. To me when releasing any of my music.
I don't know. I've never released a cover before, so I wasn't sure of like, how do I do this? Do I need to like just hit up Charlie on Twitter and be like, hey, is this cool? Or like, no, But it was interesting process. You just sort of, as long as you've got a distributor like DistroKid or TuneCore, they sort of take care of all of that for you. You just tell them that like, oh, this is a cover. This was written by XCX. And they make sure that all the residuals and stuff go to them. So I'm glad that my like 5 plays a week are going to Charlie.
All right, so Tamara Valmar, thank you so much for joining us. Before we let you go though, where can our listeners find you? Where can they hype you up?
I'm mostly spending most of my days on Twitter, twitter.com/Tamara Valmar. It's not like the Scooby-Doo character. It's spelled VALMAR. And if you type that into Google, you will find me on Twitter, Bandcamp, Instagram, whatevs.
Thank you so much. That was Tamara Valmar and her song Aspect. Now we're going into Next Level Charlie, and you're listening on Local Music Hype, BRIMBANK Live FM.
I go hard, I go fast, and I never look back. I go speeding on the highway, burn rubber, no crash. Turn the volume up in the party, put your hands up and dance. Bump, bump in the rave, go forever and ever. Bounce, never sleep, push it all on repeat. I go speeding on the highway, flame burning, tire screech. Turn the volume up in your bedroom, put your hands up and scream. Bump, bump, lights go out, go forever and ever. Drop, Charlie high, blue and pink like the sky. I go speeding on the highway, vroom, vroom, it might die. Turn the volume up in your Prius, windows down and just vibe. Bump, bump in the rave, go forever and ever. And roll with your friends out till 7 a.m. Come on, meet me on the highway, slow flow and let's race. Turn the volume up on the speakers, got that look on your face. Bump, bump in the rave, go forever and ever. I go hard, I go fast, and I never look back. I go speeding